All right. Good morning, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Since it's 10 o'clock, as people keep trickling in, I'll just do the introduction stuff. I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen right now, okay?
Looks good.
All right. So I'm Alyssa Bowles, the Area 5 Engineer in Training with Ohio Department of Agriculture. I'm going to moderate the meeting today. Watch the chat. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar that you'd like answered, just type them into the chat box and we'll try to get back to you on those questions after each presentation or at the end of the webinar. Just a quick reminder that this is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. So please mute your microphones, turn off your cameras. Yeah, so go ahead and introduce it. So in today's webinar, we're going to have Lindsay Douglas, our GIS specialist with ODA, going through a demo of the ArcPro NRCS watershed tool. And if you do not have a copy of this tool as of now for ArcPro, you can go ahead and email Tim Folks at the email listed on the screen, and he'll get you a copy of them. And then following that, we're going to have Amy Boyer, our Area 3 and 5 Natural Resource Engineer with ODA, going through a demo of the new NRCS NETS tool. And then at the end, we're going to have Jeremy Keller, our State NRCS GIS NRI Specialist, going over the upcoming ArcMap retirement and some guidance for district and NRCF staff who need to get ArcPro for their computers still. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Lindsay.
Morning, guys. I'll turn on my camera for a second while I get this ready. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, can you guys see this? Alrighty, so if you guys have used the watershed tool before in ArcPro, you won't find anything new and shocking here. There'll just be a little bit of slight tweaks of how you get to things and how things run, but otherwise it's very similar. I've already gone ahead and I've added soils as well as digital elevation models to this map that I've created, which I'll go ahead and turn them on. Soils and my DEMs, which if you have questions on where to get this information, we have other videos up on our YouTube channel on doing basic ArcMap things and where to find data, but you can always reach out to me as well. So, alrighty. So to get started, first thing we have to do is I have 4 DEMs here and I need to merge them. So the way I do this is through the geoprocessing tab. Here, let's see if I can. And you can reach that through the analysis tab and tools. I already have this tab open, so I'm just going to open it. And I like to just search for tools versus going through the old toolboxes, which if you're used to that, you can find them on this tab, but I just like to search them. So in order to do that, that's still called Mosaic to new raster. And then here we're going to add all of our DEM tiles, which I'm just shift click and drag over. To me, that's the easiest way to drag them over versus trying to individually select them. It's a little faster. Here I'm going to find an output location. So for me, I like to work off the C drive. Everything seems to work a little faster that way when it comes to the watershed tool. Watersheds, and I have a test folder. So here you're only going to be selecting the folder that you want it to go in. You're not going to be naming the file yet. That's in this next step right here. So I'm going to just call this raster merge for the sake of this. And then I need to select 32-bit float, and the number of bands is 1. Now, the reason behind this is the DEMs that I have downloaded, those are the formats that are for those DEMs already. So we want to translate that into the new one. Everything else, just leave default and hit run. It takes a second because it's Arc. Okay, so it's added it to my map.
Don't need that.
And then I can go ahead and shut off these other ones. So as you can see, now it's all one uniform chunk. The reason I'm doing this is if I only used one of those DEM tiles and ran it for the watershed, and the whole watershed wasn't within that DEM tile, it would cut it off, and then it would not give you an accurate acreage. So I like to make it bigger than it needs to be. It's better safe than sorry. So now we can work with the watershed tool. So now, if you have it on your computer, you just need to remember what file you've saved it under. It is very important to know which one it is, because if you add the, if you start working with the old version that's for ArcMap, it will look like it's going to work. Everything will come up. It looks just like it should work, except when you run it, it fails. So I usually always go to the catalog here in Pro to run things. And then I have it saved here. So you can see here's the old version. If I open it up, it looks like it should work. There's all the files and everything. You can still see everything. But if I tried to run that, it's not going to work. Here's my ArcPro version. And it looks very similar. So just make sure you have the right version. That's a hiccup that you run into. I've done it to myself multiple times.
Yeah.
So now, say you don't want to have to go through your files every time to find where this watershed tool is. If you right click on this and say add to favorites, it's going to add it to this tab here, which is kind of like a little shortcut, which makes it a little easier and cleaner. So we'll get started. The watershed tool. First thing we do is we define the area of interest. So sometimes if you double click, it doesn't want to open. I'm not sure why, but if you right click it and hit open, it opens it here in this pane. Again, we're going to find our workspace. I've already made a folder on my C drive. This is where I put my raster merge as well. So we'll put it in there. And just a note, I know I've said this before, but it does not like anything with special characters. So that's another reason I put things on my C drive. So if your computer is backed up by OneDrive, it tends to add a lot of extra characters in the file names, and it does not like that. So if you're having trouble with the tool failing, look and see what the file names are called. Because sometimes I know with OneDrive, it's kind of hard to tell. You think you're putting it on your computer, but really it's running through OneDrive, all kinds of fun stuff. So if you can get it on your C drive, that's ideal. All right, so now we're going to put in our raster merge that we made. I'm very much a click and drag person. There's other ways to do this. You do the drop down, or if you didn't have it added to your map, you could add it through a file, but usually I have them added and I just click and drag. So here we're going to pick our units, which are going to be in feet. Okay, now here's where it's a little bit different than map. So we're going to define our area of interest, our shape, the area we want to look at. So we're going to click on this pencil and it's going to give us multiple options. I don't know why it does this, but you're going to pick polygon. And we're just going to go in here. We'll draw a nice big square so we know we're getting everything. Double click at the end. And then if you want to do contour lines at the end, you can select them here. I'm gonna do 5-foot contours so that it runs a little bit faster and you can still see what it looks like, but you can do it all the way up to 1/2 foot. And then you're gonna hit run. And there's a lot of waiting with this, so if there's questions when tools are running, you can, Alyssa, you can tell me if there's anything in the chat.
So Nikki asked if there are written instructions for the geoprocessing tools, I think for merging the tiles.
I have one for ArcMap. I have not updated it to Pro, which I should probably do that at some point. So I will make a note to do that.
And then Josh asked if the DEMs are from the 2020 OGRIP.
Yes, they are from OGRIP. I just downloaded those from the OGRIP website.
And then someone asked if you couldn't just merge an entire county's DEMs to save a few steps, but I think Jeremy addressed that in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but it's going to be a pretty big file and bog it down. So I personally don't like to do big data sets like that if I can help it, just for the sake of runtime and not bogging down your computer. But yeah. Anything else before we move on?
I think that's good.
Alrighty. So this is what it dumps out, just like ArcMap. You get all your different files. So it looks pretty busy. So what I normally do is I come in here and I'll turn some stuff off so I can see what I'm looking at. I like to keep on the depth grid for a future step, but a lot of these other ones are kind of redundant. Alrighty. So now to get to our next step, you just click this arrow back and it takes you back to your catalog or your favorites folder. And then we're going to open our next step, which is create stream networks. So here we are going to input the area of interest that we just made. And it'll always be called whatever folder and then _ AOI. So click and drag. And here's where you would digitize any culverts. Some counties have layers that have their bridges and culverts marked. Some do not. I do not have the one for this county, but I do know for a fact, because I'm familiar with the area, that there are 2 bridges right here. So I would come in, I'm going to click my little pencil, and again, it's going to give you a lot of options, but here you're going to click lines. And you can see here on the road, it looks like the water's being backed up. In reality, there's a bridge here. It just can't tell that. So we need to tell it that we need to cut through here. There's a path through there. So you're just going to click on one side and double click on the other. And sometimes it's not as obvious with the depth grid. So if that's what it looks like without the depth grid, but the grid helps a little bit. There's some other spots. Just kind of go through if you don't have a layer and use your best judgment on everything here. So I don't see any more that are really obvious. Maybe there would be one here. Actually, I do know that there is one here, but it won't really affect the watershed I'm looking at. So we'll add one there. My guess is there probably is one here. And sometimes if you have really good imagery, you can actually see. So I didn't actually get it lined up very well there, but for the sake of time, we'll say that's good. So it's good to have a roads layer on, because usually your roads are what are kind of showing in the DEM a backup of water, but when it's not really in reality. So, okay, next step here is entering the threshold of acres. So the default in ArcMap was always 1 acre. For some reason, in this ArcPro tool, it's 5. If you make it 1 acre, you're going to get more streamlines, more blue lines on your map. And if you're doing small watersheds, like for waterways, make your number smaller. If you're doing something really big, you can leave it at 5. But for the sake of this, I'm going to say 1. Because the thing I used it for most in my previous jobs was for waterways. So, alrighty, we're going to run the tool. And if you ever want to see what it's doing, you can open this details tab here, and it's it'll show you what it's running through, which is kind of cool, especially if you're not sure if it's running. So like here, it's hung up at 100%. You can kind of see what it's doing, see if it's thinking. Personally, I can hear my fan on my computer running, so I know it's working. And if you do the threshold as 1 acres, it's going to take a little longer to run than if you did 5 acres, just because it has more to draw, more to work on. So just take that into account when you do one of these.
We have a question from Dylan. He said, I assume the data from ODOT's TIMS site for items like the culvert and bridge inventory, that data from the websites is compatible with ArcPro the same as ArcGIS?
Yes, it should be. I believe those are just shape files. And I think those are mostly on state routes, if I remember correctly. So like your township and your county roads might not have any data on those ones, but that is helpful if you have nothing. So it should work in ArcPro just like it did in ArcMap. So, alrighty. So now you can see it drew a lot of blue lines, which is good. That's what we want. Again, we're going to do our back arrow. Our next is create our watershed. We're going to open it. And here we're going to do the streams that it just created, which are right here. And then we're going to digitize our outlet. So if we're making a waterway and we know that this is our outlet here, we will go and we're going to do line. And we need to dissect across the a blue line. Otherwise, it's not really it's gonna give you something really goofy. It will still draw a watershed even if there isn't a blue line. It's just it might not look correct. You'd have to definitely check it against contour lines. But all right, and then we're gonna give it a name. So I'll say waterway A. And then I'm gonna hit create flow path. Now, the thing about flow path, if you do not have the right extensions, this will probably fail. And I believe that's the spatial analysis extension. Amy, correct me if that's not right, but I think it's the spatial analysis extension. If you do not have that, this will probably not work. And on some computers, this will bog it down even if you have that extension. So it's something you'll just have to get to know with your computer. But if it runs pretty well and you have that extension, it should work. So I'm gonna let that run. The nice thing about Pro, you can still kind of move around and look at stuff while it's thinking. Doesn't always load everything, but you view details. So you might see that there are some duplicate. It's saying that there's a duplicate in the folder, and so it has to delete it first before it can make the new one. And this is because I use the same folder for practice. So that is why we're getting that error message. But it's helpful to know, especially if you're accidentally overriding something within a folder. It's kind of giving you a little bit of a warning. Okay. So here you can see that has ran this watershed. It has automatically labeled both the watershed. It's given us how many acres are in the watershed, its average slope, and then along this kind of checkered darker blue line, that's our longest flow path in the watershed. And this is its length right here. So you will use this when you're doing like the waterway sizing wizard. You'll plug those things in to help you size your waterway. Okay. So here's the fourth step. I don't think I might have used this once ever while designing waterways. But the purpose of it is if you know that there's a mistake in the watershed and you know how it actually flows, say the DEM isn't picking up on something that you know is there, you can go in and you can edit the shape of the waterway, or the watershed, I'm sorry. So say you know this bubbles out farther here because of some sort of hole that they've dug or something like that. You can edit this, and then you're going to rerun. If I open it up here, I'm not going to run it, but you would just put in your watershed in here, and it's going to recalculate its area and its average slope so that you wouldn't have to manually do that. So we're not going to run that one today because we think that this one's great. So the next step is running the runoff curve number. So this section gets a little tricky for licensing. So I believe everyone can still do the prepare soils and land use step here. But when it comes to the 2A, where you actually calculate the runoff curve number, if you do not have an advanced license, it will not complete the step because ArcPro is a little goofy in how it does its licensing. It won't let you do more than, I think, 3 layers of a merge if you don't have the advanced version. Why? I don't know. I think it's kind of a goofy reasoning behind it, but anyway, if you run into that and you can't finish it and you look at your licensing and you don't have advanced, that is why. But I have advanced, so I'm going to show you what it looks like. Here's we're going to prepare our soil and land use here. All right, so we're going to put in our watershed layer, which it renamed it for us since there was a duplicate. And then we're going to put in our soils layer, which I'll scroll down, Fairfield soils. So before I move on, I want to show you an attribute table. So you want to make sure that you have the version that has the hydrologic
Hey, Lindsay,
rating.
I can't see yours.
Is it back?
It's back now.
Okay. Okay, cool. You want a version of your soils that has the hydrologic groups defined in it, which is going to be the C, C, D, B. It's A through D is your options. And then this kind of just indicates how much runoff in a storm event occurs on those soils. There's a whole thing I won't get into with that, but you want to make sure that that's what it is. On NRCS computers, I think they're under, it's on your C drive somewhere. I'm trying to remember, but it will have this HSG at the end of it. If you don't have it, you can ask your NRCS friends for help. or us other soil and water friends who have those files already. And then here we're going to select which column we want to look at. So I want to look at this one, which is this column here. And then I don't have access to the clue layer, so I will not have anything to put in here. And it says that it's optional. So then we're going to go ahead and run it. And what this is doing is it is clipping the soils to the watershed. And then it's seeing which each chunk of the soils layer is within that watershed, and whether or not we need to define it further. So some of the soils have multiple ratings. If a soil has been tiled, it may have another rating. So I know there's a lot of soils in this case, so there is you have one that has CD here and it hasn't filled it in with a color. And it's basically wanting you to go in and say, does this have any drainage, artificial drainage added to it? If it has artificial drainage added to it, you're going to pick the lower of the two, which would be C in this case. So I'm going to open my attribute table for my soils. And if you have multiple ones that need definition, it's pretty nice to just go ahead and click here. You can right click and say zoom to. So that way you know which one you're actually looking at. If you have better imagery, sometimes you can tell whether or not there's tile in there. I just have a default imagery on here for the sake of this demo, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick D because I cannot tell whether or not there is drainage. We'll pick D. You have to click off of it, and then it's filled it in with its color. There's no other ones that need defining, so we can say that we're done. So under the Edit tab, you can hit Clear if something is selected. So we're done with that one. So I can select this off. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the depth grid as well, and the streams, because there's a lot going on here. Make it a little easier to see, and the Fairfield soils. Okay, that makes it a little bit more streamlined. So for land use, since I don't have the clue layer in here, it didn't break it apart based on your tracked layers. So I will have to do that manually. So I can go into the attribute table. Now, something about ArcPro that is different than ArcMap. Anytime you're editing in ArcPro, if you've made no changes to your settings, your editor is automatically on. So you do not have to turn it on to change this stuff. That was not the case in ArcMap. So take that into consideration. Makes this actually a little bit easier. So we want to be able to split this. If I select it, you can see it's the whole watershed. And we don't want that because we see that there's a woods here. There's, like some sort of grass lot over here. We've got different fields, maybe farmed differently. So we want to go ahead and split that, which if you go up here, and these are quick tools, that's usually how I access it. However, there is also a tab called Modified Features, and it's got all the same things here too. But if we hit split, it's asking you to select a polygon. If you right click this layer and hit select all, it's gonna pop up and give you an option now. So we're gonna say split, and we're gonna click here. There, it's chopped out the woods here. You just have to make sure you go through the through or connected to these lines here in order for it to split. If you didn't quite make it to the edge, it's not going to say that it split. So here we'll cut out the road. So we know that's different. And we'll say that these two fields are farmed differently. To finish. All right, it's being goofy here. We'll hit escape. Try that again. All right. Maybe we won't. Anyway, I'm not sure what's happening. Try apply. Okay. Anyway, it's not liking that for some reason. For sake of time, I'm not gonna try and force it. Okay. So in order to know which chunk you're looking at, since you just divided it multiple times, I always like to click right here and it selects that chunk. So we're gonna say that this is all, we'll double click here and it gives you all your options. So we'll say that these are straight row crops. Okay, apparently we're being glitchy today. With good residue. Okay. And then I'm gonna say good. Now for this one, I'm gonna say that this one's wooded area. We'll say it's not burned with some forest litter. We'll say it's good. Or we could even say fair if we wanted to, but for the sake of this, I'm just trying to be quick. Alrighty, so we'll say that this field is also straight row crop, or we can say it's small grains. We'll do small grains with crop residue. Obviously, you're going to be picking things that are out there in reality. So you worked with a farmer, you know what their crop rotation is. You've seen the site. That is ideal. You don't want to just be kind of guessing. Good. And then here, we'll say that this is a residential lot. You can also do open space. But I know a lot of places they'll have residential areas. So we'll say residential 1 acre. And it still has you pick good, even though there's not really a rating for it. And then we know that this one is a road. So we'll go and pick a road. And it's paved and it's got open ditches. Okay. So now up here, we're going to say save edits. And we can hit clear so that nothing's selected. Saving your edits is an important step here. Nice thing about ArcPro is it's going to tell you whether or not something hasn't been saved up here when you go to open a tool. So now that we've edited those 2 layers, we can go on to the last step here, which is where we're going to calculate our runoff curve. And here we're just going to put in our waterway. And it knows which files are associated with it, so you don't have to define that. It's kind of nice, which is exactly like the ArcMap version. And then this is, like I said before, this is where you'll run into issues if you do not have an advanced license. For some reason, they think that you need to pay more to do more layers. I think with a basic and a standard license, you can sandwich together maybe 2 layers. So if it's 3 or more, you have to have an advanced version, which is, you know, they have to make money, I guess, but where they pick their threshold, I thought was a little bit inconvenient.
While that's running, there were a couple of questions that came up in the chat during that last little bit. So someone asked what name you would put in to rerun your watershed.
If you needed to like rerun a watershed within, say you didn't need to redo everything and you needed to run another watershed, you can use the same name. It's probably just going to put a 1 after, like it did for me. That way it's going to save that old file in there, and it's just going to make a new one and just add a 1 or a 2 afterwards. That, or you can do it something separate, a new name, and that way it doesn't have to make a new name for you. If you're doing watersheds that aren't overlapping, I guess if it's in the same file, it's gonna, as long as you're naming it the same thing, it's gonna start adding numbers afterwards. If that makes sense. Let me know if that did answer that question.
And then there was a question that says you still need to correct the hydro group from 2-lettered to 1, but I think you addressed that, the C/D.
Yes. Yes. It will not run properly if you do not select those. It won't be able to select the correct runoff curve number on the last step.
And then I think there was a question, what if part of that C/D soil is drained and part is undrained?
So you can edit it and split it to make them 2 separate chunks if you knew only part of it was drained. Just like I edited for the land use, you would do the same thing for the soils. And that you would split them and then select which letter you wanted for each one of those chunks.
And then what happened if the watershed covers more than one county? Do we need to combine the soil layers first, or does the program take more than one soils data?
My understanding is that you'll have to do a merge beforehand. I have not done it in Pro, where it's been in multiple counties. But in previous experience with ArcMap, that was the case. I don't think it can take more than one soils.
Oh, Josh is raising his hand. You can unmute if you want to ask a question.
So I actually came across this last week on ArcGIS Pro, and yeah, it's just the merge tool is all you have to do is put the 2 soils layer in there and it will combine them together.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes it's a big data set, but and if your computer's really chugging, you can kind of clip both of those soils layers to like a general area that you need and then merge those together beforehand instead of having both counties, like the whole county together. Just depends on how well your computer runs. If it does fine, you can just merge both of them and then run it that way.
Josh said special paste may be an option too.
Okay.
I think that has addressed all of the questions so far.
Okay. Alrighty. So there is another way to get to your runoff curve number using the National Land Cover Database. I've tried it once and had no success with it, so I'm not going to pretend to know how that works. But as far as running your runoff curve number, let's see, should have added a file. I open my attribute table. This is what it's given me. So it's merged together both the land use and the soil rating. And it's given me a runoff curve number. And this is what you're going to use to plug into your waterway sizing wizard. And this is the acreage for each of those right here. Now, in ArcMap, I knew how to run a report that gave you a really nice, pretty printout for this table. I tried to figure that out last week and had no success. So that is pending. If I figure out how to make a pretty report, I will let you guys know. But you can copy this down. You should be able to print your attribute table here. Because if you select all, let me do it. Of course not. Yeah, you can hit copy and then you can dump that into an Excel sheet and print that from Excel. Not that we like a lot of extra steps, but that is one way to get around that. And then you've got a nice map that you can also print out. You can change, of course I have everything selected, but if you wanted to come in here and change the symbology to show the ratings here. I'm going to turn this off. You wanted to come in here and say symbology, and you want to do unique values based on your on-off curve number. Of course, the default is also always some Easter egg explosion for some reason, but you can pick something else and print this off with a legend. It's just nice, something nice to have in your folder for proof. That's pretty much it for the watershed tool. Like I said, it's pretty similar to the ArcMap version, just with a couple little tweaks. If you guys ever have questions, you can always ask me, although I will be on maternity leave here at the end of March. So I'll be gone for a little bit, but I'll be back. So are there any other questions, Alyssa?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Yeah, and if you guys think of something later on in the presentation today, just we can address that at the end too.
Oh, Nikki said you said to enter this info into the waterway sizing wizard, but don't you mean EFH2?
Yes, thank you. Which would be the help me, your storm runoff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
If editing is turned off for the soils and land use layers, how do you turn editing back on?
Good question. So if your settings are changed, which when I originally got Pro, I did change them to where I had to turn them on because working with ArcMap for so long, that's just how I was used to it. And I was a little afraid I was going to accidentally edit layers without meaning to. This edit tab will look a little different. There'll be a little pencil right in this area, and you'll click that and turn on your editing ability. And then you'll be able to edit your attribute tables and your layers once that's on.
Oh, can you put watershed boundary then into CAD by shapefile?
So yes, you should be able to export it as a shapefile, which I think it's let's see. I think it's already it's in a geodatabase, so it's kind of, if you looked at it in your file explorer, it's not probably going to show up correctly, but you can say data export feature, and then you would select a home for it, and it should export it as a shape file here. Of course, now I'm like having a moment. I think it gives you the option to select it as a shapefile. And then you should be able to add that. Of course, I just re-added it. But yeah, if you have issues with that, you can always give me a call and we can figure that out for sure. I haven't ran that in ArcPro yet, so.
Okay. What layers that we create do we need to save? Are they the same as we save now when creating waterways?
So as far as the features that it creates, I assume that's what they mean.
I think so.
Okay. So it just depends on what you're using it for. If you're using it for a waterway, you're going to want to have your watershed. Now, having the exact like where your outlet is, I mean, that's helpful to know. Flow path is a good one to keep. Whether or not you need all of the streams just depends on, you know, what you're working with. If you're not going to do another waterway in this area in the next 2 years, you know, you don't really need to keep all of that. Contours is kind of important because it's how we're able to check the watershed for accuracy. I actually highly recommend when you print out your map to have the contours on there, especially for the person checking your work. That way they can see, okay, yeah, you know, this looks accurate. This isn't, you know, cutting across some valley and adding it into your watershed. Your runoff curve number is a good one. I don't know if you would really need to save the soils and the land use one unless you want to, because it's smashed together within your runoff curve number. But yeah, personally, once a watershed is made in a folder, I don't really split it apart. I keep it together until I get to a point where I'm like, okay, we're past the point where I know I'm going to need a digital version of this anymore. And then I will, you know, when I'm cleaning up files or something, I'll get rid of the whole folder at once versus splitting it apart. But that's kind of just up to your personal data management, how you like to do things. So.
And then someone asked where they can get the data layer for the soils with the HSG data.
So I know NRCS has it on their shared drives. So you'll probably have to ask someone with access to NRCS, or if not, you can probably get a hold of us and we could probably figure it out. Just kind of depends. So every county's a little bit different. So it's hard for me to say for sure.
And then a couple of people addressed trying to export to CAD, saying there's export to CAD tool, or if you type the .shp extension in when you're trying to move it to the file.
Yes. I've not messed with the direct to CAD functioning because I don't have CAD anymore. But yeah.
Okay.
And Google's pretty helpful for those kind of things. Learning to know, you know, like any kind of connection between CAD and ArcPro. So Google is your friend. Anything else?
Okay. I think we are good to move on to Amy. Thank you,
Okay.
Lindsay.
You're welcome. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, so we are going to move on to the NETS. So let me share my screen. So this is NRCS's new tool. It is a work in progress. This is the first version, so it has a few little bugs that still need worked out. It's been out for about 3 months now, I think. I've been using it for most of my watersheds. I like it better than the ArcPro and the ArcMap. It's actually combining those tools with the ArcPro or GIS there with the EFH2 and merging them together, so there's not as much repetitiveness in there. That said, it is a work in progress. It's a little glitchy. You know, hopefully that we work through those bugs and get a lot of that taken care of. And I think a lot of you, for most applications, are going to like this and probably use the ArcPro more for pretty maps and other applications maybe. Unfortunately, this is running on an NRCS server, so currently you do have to have an NRCS link pass to get this to work. Right now, I'm thinking we don't think that's going to change. I think Blake's on here, so if you have anything additional to add, go ahead and you can answer that, Blake.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, as far as I know, link pass is the only option, but they are talking about some other options, but I don't know if there's any solutions on the horizon, so I'll assume it's going to be link pass is required.
Okay, so once you open up this program, and if you are a person who does have a link pass, we can get you that link that you can add. So just let somebody just email me or whatever if you need that, or we will put that out somewhere. So once you get everything e-authenticated and get into the program, this is what it's going to look like. Long term, this program, I think, is going to combine the engineering tools, EFH2, EFT, AWM, Waterworks. I'm not sure what else. So it sounds like it's going to be an all-in-one application for all of our current programs. I'm assuming this is going to span over probably several years. Who knows? You know, I guess we will know when that happens. But for right now, this is what the home screen looks like, and you can create a project. It saves all of your projects that you have done in the past, but we can go to create. This is what the screen looks like. So we're just going to go and we'll say this is test 2 because I think I already have a test 1 in there. We're going to say hydrology analysis. Now there is an option for design. That's going to just save your information in a slightly different way. Like the old EFT, there was some design components that kind of say they replaced CAD. But they let you do some CAD type applications. This is going to be the same way. I don't think too many of you are probably going that route. So we're going to go to the hydrology analysis. Obviously hit our state. This is going to be adding in all of our rainfall data when we do this, just like any other program here. I'm going to say it says optional under practice. I assure you this program likes you to fill out everything. So even things that say optional, let's go ahead and put things in anyway. Now, when we chose our state and county, it also gave us a coordinate system. This is going to change depending on what county that we put in. I put in Perry County here, and it's going to give us what the USDA information or server is under, so it is not state plane. So once we get in our create project information, we're going to proceed to create hydrology. So it's going to zoom to whatever county that you put in there. And this is what our, oh, it's not what I wanted to do there. So I'm going to get rid of the hill shade. You can have as many of those on there as you want. Typically, I want the contours and the streamlines. You can type an address if you have an address to the place, or you can just zoom in to wherever we want to go here. This is going to look a lot like Google Earth sort of thing, where we can add imagery right there like that. So we have our imagery. And again, this is going to run a lot like those engineering tools. The first thing we're going to do is an area of interest here. So I'm going to click on to my polygon. Again, just like our other applications, we want to make sure that our box is big enough. to make sure we encompass that entire watershed here. I'm going to do a contour interval of 1 foot. Again, the stream threshold, a lot of times I do 1 foot. 2 foot's going to make it probably go a little quicker here. Now, so we have 2 options here. You can search for an available DEM service. That's what I'm going to encourage most of you to probably do. Or it says you can upload a DEM. I have tried downloading things off OGRIP and uploading them through the DEM upload. I have not been successful. It gives me an error message every single time I do it. If anyone has had good luck doing that, let me know. But I like the search for available DEMs. You can just search. You select the 3 meter bare earth. Okay, I'm trying to get rid of you, Blake. There, I have your picture here. There. And you hit next. Now, this might take a minute to run. The one thing you want to know is this is not going to be that really new DEM that you get off OGRIP. So that's one of the things you want to think of. If you're in an area where you know we've had a lot of construction work, we know that those contours have changed, this is probably not the program you want to use. You want to default back to the ArcPro. But this will take hopefully not too long here. One of the major issues I think with this program is it does run on the NRCS server. That means the more people that are on that NRCS server, the slower this program works. I got on here at 7 o'clock this morning and thought, oh my gosh, what if this thing doesn't work? And I ended up doing a whole series of slide shots through PowerPoint in case we need to use that here today if something happens. But it ran very, very quickly early this morning. When I've tried to get on this program and use it in the afternoon, it goes much, much slower, and sometimes it times out on you. So FYI, be on here in the morning. Hopefully we will be early enough today that it actually does not stop on us. But you can see it did this all at one time. The beauty of this is you do not have to merge any DEMs. If you're okay with that older DEM, it works perfectly fine. It does many steps all at one time. So in this case here, I'm going to turn a few things off just so it's a little cleaner looking for me. So at this point, I'm drawing an outlet just like I would in any of the ArcPro applications. The hydraulic connections, that's going to be the same as your culverts. I'm not going to have that in this case here. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw my outlet across that blue line, and I'm going to hit next. This is the step that we often have some issues with and it timing out and really slowing down on us. So hopefully it doesn't take too long here. Does anybody have any questions yet? None at all.
No, the questions have mostly been in the chat about what to do to be able to access this tool if they aren't already on a CCE machine or already have the link pass, which I think Jeremy's going to be addressing in the next presentation.
Yes. Well, it is going, so that is a good thing. And usually it doesn't take too much longer than it would for the other application to run.
Never mind. Jeremy is not going to be addressing that. Link pass is above his pay grade.
We will get more information out to everybody as time goes on here. So it is running here. It's always good when you see different things running across the bottom. So Another thing you're going to notice here, and this is good for people who aren't real comfortable with watersheds necessarily, is if you know how we get the straight line that, you know, I don't like, and I'm probably going to give you your watershed back and probably tell you to redo it if you give me a watershed with a straight line. This one will actually tell you if your watershed is incorrect, if your area of interest is not big enough, and it will force you to redo that. So something very good, I guess, for those that may not always be sure of what they need. Now you can see that we have our watershed here. And let's face it, this is not correct. This is not how water runs. But the beauty of this one is we can click on this and we can stretch these vertices here, because I know that if I was hand drawing this, this would be a little more like this. And once you're happy, you know, you can kind of hand draw this. Are we happy with it? And once we are, we can hit next. Sometimes it gives you these weird little things that kind of cross if you have, you know, like really tight contours, and then you're also going to have to take those vertices and you're going to have to stretch them so you don't get anything that crosses.
We do have a question. Is it able to handle watersheds that span across county and or state lines?
It will. This one is not going to be so dependent on all of those. I guess I'm not sure about state lines, but county lines should be okay because it's like one big DEM kind of. It's kind of searching for things. I guess we will try that across the state line and see if that works. I'm going to guess we may have issues since we did pull what county we were in. I don't know. I guess as long as you were in the same, I guess, zone there or whatever for projection, we will look into that. We will address that. So right now you can see it kind of did our watershed length. It's in that darker blue there. Now what it's doing is kind of that last part that Lindsay went over. It's actually getting our soils, it's cutting those, and it's also cutting some of our land use sort of things here. So for our soils, it is using the Web Soil Survey as its data. For our land use, it is using the USGS. So there is going to be some clipping and merging needed on that. Getting there. It likes to turn things back on sometimes on you. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to turn off. Make it a little easier to see again. So you can see this is kind of doing the land use. It's kind of off a little bit on what we have, but this is very simple. You can kind of go to each one and it kind of shows you which is which. So I'm actually going to go to a split here, and this is running just like we had before. I'm going to split out my field a little bit there. And then that's going to give its own thing. I'm going to actually go ahead and I'm going to merge these two. And I'm going to do another split. Again, we're making sure we're crossing that line. So then we have this piece and we have that piece, and I'm going to merge those two together. So now I have ones that make sense and they're on the line. Some of these you're gonna have to do a lot of merging. Some of them you're not gonna have to do very much merging at all. And again, this is just like the other program. At this point, I'm going to say this is row crop with residue. This one is going to be woods. And again, we're going to have straight crops with residue. And again, we're going to select just like we would before. We're going to assume good, woods. Let's face it, all our woods out there are fair. Usually we don't have too many good ones, and I'm going to say good on that crop. So then we are going to hit next, and it's going to bring up our soils data. So basically what it's doing here, and so if you go to view details, it's going to tell you that 90% of this is C, 10% could be D. It's going to include our inclusions in there. So it's going to be happy with the C here. On the other one is going to be one that it's considering CD. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and say D because I know that portion that is covering is in the woods, and that this field is not tiled. Now, I have not seen a way that we can split this like you can through the ArcPro. If anyone knows a way to do that, let me know. Currently, we're making a list, I guess, of things that we would like to be corrected in the next version of this, and that might be one of the things that we ask them to do as well. The real problem with this one is it doesn't actually label soil, so we don't know what soils that is. In this case, you know, what I'm doing right now is I am pulling up Web Soil Survey, and, you know, I can see that this is a Centerburg and Amanda soils. These are ones that I'm very familiar with. So for the time being, continue to pull up your Web Soil Survey to know what type of soils that you have. Again, once I set those, I can hit next.
We have a question in the chat about what makes woods crops good versus fair versus poor.
So this goes back to our hydrology TDP. So we're going to consider that as far as the crops by land use cover, you know, are we having, you know, do we have any cover on it? You know, is it bare ground? Do we have a little bit of cover? Do we have a lot of corn stalk residue on there? And this is just finishing its thinking with the report. So it has put a whole report together. This is our EFH2. We have completely done both steps through what we considered before through the GIS and going back in and putting all the information in EFH2. It has done it all for us. We have our curve number, which is 82. We have our watershed length. We have our slope. We have our time of concentration, our drainage area. We have all the information that we need as far as hydrology goes for our storm frequency, our peak flow, our runoff. We even have somewhat of our interactive hydrograph here. And at this point, we're pretty much done. We can download different things. So we can download an entire report, which is going to be a 14-page report that's going to include this. It's going to include all the maps with the watershed, the soils, everything. It's going to include the sources of all of our information. Or we can go and download detail files that it's going to basically separate those 14 pages into just various parts that we want to print out. We can also go to a download GIS files. Now we're going to be unhappy when we download those because it does not download into a shape file. It's going to give us some other format. But fortunately, Jacob Murray was very nice and sat down one day and did a step-by-step instructions of how to get that GIS data into our CAD. So we will make this available for everyone as well. Let me open up. There's the PDF. This is an example of what that report looks like when we download it. Again, it's going to look pretty familiar. It's going to give us all that basic information. It's going to give us the chart that we're very familiar with all the details there. It's going to give us that hydrograph. There's going to be our watershed with the contours. It even gives our lat and long at our outlet point, if that's important to you. It's going to give us more precipitation data than anyone would ever want, so you may not want to print all of that stuff out there. And then it's going to give us the source of all the data that it used for the entire program. So it's a really nice program. Once we get the issues worked out, I think this is a much quicker method of doing a simple watershed.
We've got a question about how it automatically selects the rainfall distribution type and is not allowing you to change it. Is the peak flow storm designs that it proves acceptable for NRCS projects?
Yes, so it's taking the same NOAA data that we use through the EFH2. It's going to be the exact same thing. And it doesn't let you select because it's telling you which one you should be using. This is the eventual replacement of our EFH2 program. Do you have anything else to say, Blake?
No, nothing from my end. Thank you, Amy.
Where do people obtain the NRCS NETS program?
We can get that information to people.
And does anyone have an idea of when EFH2 will be phased out?
I have not heard from my end.
And I think we can go ahead and move on to Jeremy's presentation. I think he's going to go over how Soil and Waters can get ArcPro for their computers.
Hey, this is Jeremy. Yes, that's what I'm going to go over. Not LinkPass, though. That's not touching that. I just want to share once again the process for getting the Esri licenses for you guys. It's a complicated process, kind of complicated, but it's probably worth it because you get the free license out of it. So what you should get is this guide. It's version 2 is the current one, so it's from last October, and I wrote this up for you guys to kind of walk through the process. And it's important that you actually read it and not just go to the fun parts, because there's a bunch of steps for you to in there. I want you to be successful. I want you to have the licenses. It's important to me that you succeed, but I can't do all the steps for you. So you gotta meet me halfway. One of the biggies is this software use agreement. It's a 2-page form. The signature blocks are on the 2nd page, and this is not from me. This is from our national office, like our Esri contract managers require this. And it's basically just saying that you're not going to use this for fun and profit. It's for work, and it'll only be installed on district-owned machines. So, you know, people get wrapped around the axle about this. It doesn't have to be notarized. It can just be anyone in the office that's legit, like the administrator or somebody can sign it. And then somebody from NRCS, if your DC doesn't want to sign it, then just send it to me and I'll sign it. It's not a big deal. It's just sort of an honor system, code of ethics type thing. So, but I gotta have it. They won't issue the license. They won't even talk about the license until we have that form in hand. If you've already sent me one and you need additional licenses over what you've already got, just remind me that you've already sent me one, and I keep them all, so I'll have it on file, so you don't have to do it again. I just need it the one time. The other big step is this roster. The licenses are issued to individual staff members, so we have to actually have the name of the person who's getting the license. There's a little bit of a ability to have like a placeholder type license if you're anticipating hiring someone or something like that, and you've got a machine that's not assigned yet. But they really don't want to give those out. The national office wants a person on each license, so I can kind of argue case by case if you've got these special circumstances, but it's got to be the exception. So basically, I need this. I need that use agreement, and I need this form or something like it that's got the same information. And I tried to make it as easy as possible, you know, to give you like the blocks and all that. You have the option to request a desktop or ArcMap license for a while. I don't know how long that's going to last. So that's an option. So, you know, there's basically you put the name here, check. Do you want ArcMap? Yes or no? and then tell me what extensions that you need. And here's the list of extensions down here at the bottom. Just put those little codes in there. And then the other option is for a pro license. You can have both. That's not a problem. You can have them both running on the same machine if you need that transitional period or to make you feel better or whatever. But map's gonna die at some point. So pro would be, you might as well start learning it, is all I'm saying, unless you're retiring real soon. But same deal, check the box, what you need, and then the extensions again. And don't assume that I'm going to understand what you want. I mean, make it clear. Pretend like I'm 5 years old and I need lots of help understanding what you want, because I need it to be crystal clear. Otherwise, I'm just going to come back to you and ask to clarify it, and that's just going to delay getting the license even more. So just, you know, be careful, read the instructions carefully, fill out the form correctly. Make sure you actually need these extensions. We have a limited pool nationally, so you know, spatial analyst is no problem. That's the one everybody needs. So I just ask for that automatically. You don't have to specify spatial analyst. That's the one that's going to run all the watershed tools. If you've got a legitimate business need for some of these other extensions, then sure, knock yourself out. But if you're just getting them because you can, then you're wasting a license that somebody else somewhere in the country could be using that might need it. So, I mean, if you really think you need network analyst, like you're planning shipping routes for trucks, and that's something you need to do, then cool, we'll get it for you. But understand there's only maybe 100 of those licenses in the country, so you're taking it away from that pool. But like I said, spatial analysts you're going to get, and there was some discussion about the license levels, the advanced versus basic versus standard. I just automatically ask for advanced for everybody, and no one ever says no. So I don't know why it's even an option to get something less than the advanced license, because I mean, if it's free, what difference does it make from our standpoint? So we just get the advanced license, so you've got the full capability with no restrictions on how many layers you can handle and that kind of nonsense. So anyway, just make sure you read it and do your end of the homework and get it to me. It seems complicated. It's probably not really that complicated. Let's see. You need to let me know how much you need, what extensions you need, fill out the agreement, but then you've got to download and install the software itself. You know, we used to have to send this out to you like as these giant files that are like multi-gigabyte installation files, and it was this big deal because we'd have to find someone that could copy it down from an NRCS server to a thumb drive and give it to you, and it was a whole ordeal. Now you just go to this public-facing download site and you download it yourself and install it, and I don't have to touch it. It's easier for you. You kind of knock out the middleman. So make sure you do that. The installation itself is kind of on you guys. I can't. There's a little instruction sheet here that I'm sending out now with the stuff on how to activate it. It's tricky to act. This is for Pro. Sorry, ArcMap is pretty straightforward. ArcPro is a little more complicated. The default activation process for ArcPro is to use ArcGIS Online, which we don't issue accounts for ArcGIS Online to anybody. So except for occasional NRCS employees, but even that's exceptional. So what you're going to get is a little file called a PRVC. It's a provisioning file, and that is the license that will activate your software. But you got to go through this process. It's very specific, and you got to step through it. So follow the instructions again. I'm going to give my standard warning that I'm not an IT person. I know I've got that GIS specialist title, but that's more like a collateral duty for me. I'm actually a forester, so if you need help with like setting up a timber cruise, let me know. But if you need help with software installation, I'm not your guy. I can try. I'm sympathetic. I care. I'll commiserate with you, but I can't actually fix your network issues. So if you're not on the NRCS network, I don't really have an IT support solution for you. So either talk to whoever does it for your county. If you run into problems, I mean, I can try to walk through certain common issues, but if it gets complicated, I don't have a lot of options to assist. And that's just because under the NRCS side that I work on, I'm not allowed to touch the IT stuff. We have our own separate stovepiped IT organization, and they don't trust me to touch anything. So I'm not being a hard-hearted person here. I don't know. I'm just ignorant. I'm going to admit it up front. I don't know how to do it. So, but I'll do my best to help you. And I'll certainly be sympathetic. That's kind of it for me for, you know, the overview of the process. You guys are, I mean, these licenses, we've provided them historically. It's fine. It's no big deal. Just let me know. But I do need the stuff that I'm asking for. I gotta have it. I can't even approach Salt Lake City, which is where the national contract place is, unless I have that stuff in hand. So, I mean, all you're doing is slowing it down if you don't get me the pieces I need up front. And that's it for me. I'll take whatever questions or comments or criticisms you have. Thanks.
So we just had a few questions from the chat. So when will we get individual logins, or will we get individual logins per copy of ArcPro? Without a login, we haven't been able to run updates for our copies.
Yeah, so the little automatic update process is not going to work for these installations. You'll have to go back to that download site and get the next version. And I don't have a lot of guidance for that. If you hear there's a new version, then maybe go check that site and download it. It's just part of the goofy workarounds that we have on this. So I don't, I know that there's an automatic update feature in ArcPro, and it probably wants to try to run for you, but it's just not going to happen. So just go back to that box site and download the new version. And be aware that NRCS is going to actually be running probably a version behind you, because we have to go through the full CEC clearance process to make sure it's not loaded with spyware or infiltrated by communists. I don't know what they look at on it and why we can't run industry standard software, but for whatever reason, we're usually a version behind what you guys would have available. And then, yeah, I see Danielle's question on there. This is not the process for CEC computers. This is only for machines that are owned by the district. And when I say that, I mean, I got to clarify, because I didn't realize this. Like, apparently you can own the district can own the machine, but still be on our network somehow. In some cases, that's true. I didn't realize that was a thing. So if you are operating on the USDA network with your machine and you have access to Software Center and all that, then none of this applies to you. You work through the NRCS IT system to have your updates and your installations, all that stuff. If you're on a completely separate network from us and the district owns the machine, then this is the process for you. And Matt, I don't understand your question about what list that is going to be sent out. Which list? Do you mean the documentation? Is that what you're asking?
He replied yes.
Oh, he did? Okay. All right. I didn't
Yeah.
get an update. But yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I sent that to Amy this morning, like the documentation again. So if you guys have like a distribution list or whatever, then that'll go back out. And if you don't get it, then you can ping me on email. Email is the best way, just because I'm not always in the office, and I'll at least know that you tried to get a hold of me. Yeah, if you try to call me, that's touch and go. Telephones are so 1990s. I don't even know who still uses a phone anyway. But so yeah, so email me if you have questions. That's the best way.
All right. Well, I think if there are no further questions, we can go ahead and call it a webinar. All right. Well, everyone have some good days. I guess you can reach out to any of the speakers if you have specific questions that weren't answered during the webinar. And in case you missed it, reach out to Tim Folks if you need the watershed tools for ArcPro.